Thank you so much, Louise. Always nice to be doing these sessions. So like Louise said, welcome back if you've come to any of these sessions before. Welcome as well if you are new to these. Feel free to share any of these sessions with colleagues you might have who might find it useful. And there will be this follow-up email as well. So if you do have queries and questions, please do come right back to us and we will try and answer those queries. So like Louise said, we've got some slides to go through, little bit of interaction today, not too much, but just a little bit, which is always some of the most beneficial bits of these sessions, having that discussion and sharing things that you've experienced in terms of your retrofit journey. So today we're looking at retrofit at scale, really focusing on that zero carbon target. So this might be something that you have already in your organization. When we do our masterclasses, they generally follow a very similar path, so they kind of you can follow along. So today we've got our agenda, so really thinking about it in terms of what information you have, because that's really going to help you in terms of planning your retrofit. Really thinking about upscaling. So we have significant targets as a country to retrofit as many houses as possible, and we want to absolutely be doing that as a faster speed. So really focusing on that in terms of how to try and plan that in. Thinking about some of the different approaches to take, and then we'll have some questions and answers. If you have some great examples of what's worked well for you, please do think about sharing those with other people on the call as well. So to start us off, we thought we would just kind of ask a kind of quick question. So in the chat box, have a think about what is your largest scale retrofit project that you've done. Now, you might have 100 properties, you might have 1,000 properties, or you might have significantly more than that. So for you, have a think about your largest one that you might have done. Oh, fantastic! There we go. We've got one already. So I think that was Tracy that popped up then with 2,000. So yeah, a lot of properties there. Just thinking about actually the scalability of it. I think there was another one that was just 126. It just quickly popped up and disappeared. And for us, it's thinking about, okay, the size of my organization, proportionally, what is that? But also thinking about the tenants, the residents you have, your supply chain, your workforce, your ability to kind of deliver as many as you possibly can. Thinking about things like if you're in a consortium, having that kind of shared ability to move things forward as well. So thank you to those that popped some answers in the chat. Really appreciate that. And we're all different in this. We all have different geographical settings. We have a different portfolio. We might have a lot of pre-war properties. We might have a lot of tower blocks. So it's really thinking about you and your organization. When we talk about your baseline, what we are absolutely trying to understand is where you are right now and what is included in there. We can't scale up unless we know what we're trying to scale from and to. What we're really thinking about is thinking when you're planning this through, where are we now? So understanding in terms of maybe an asset management database that you have. It might be a spreadsheet you have. You might not have very many properties at all, and therefore it's a chart on the wall. Whatever it is that is special to you and unique to you, it's then thinking about how you're going to get to where you want to go to. So this might be EPC, it might be net zero, it might be carbon neutral. Whatever it is, think about what that is, but pushing forward on those priorities that you have, particularly as we have legally binding carbon budgets as a country that we need to reach to. So thinking about our effort in that and working towards that. Understanding this is absolutely part of this. So some of these questions might be applicable to you. Some of them might be kind of out of your remit. But we wanted to kind of show them in terms of thinking about what it is that you have. So where are you now in terms of that piece of information? Do you have full data on kind of the socio-economic context of your setting, your portfolio? Do you fully understand all of those different construction types, the different tenures? So you might have things like extra care, you might have social rent, and lots of things in between. Thinking about the energy performance certificate data, do you have complete sets? Do you have clones? The amount of stock that you have, are you building new? Are you acquiring other RPs? Lots of things to really think about. And not just in terms of your role in your organization, but the organization as a whole. So there might be a development team, there might be a governance team that will really understand where that sits. So again, it's reaching out to wider colleagues to ask those questions. The middle column is then about how will you get there. So really think about how you're going to pick those priorities. Are there areas, tenants, socioeconomic groups, certain areas that you really want to focus on? What's going to be important in that approach as well? Are you going to think it's by estate, by area, by ward? Again, thinking to your business strategy, thinking towards what your portfolio looks like. Again, you might have a massive kind of portfolio of hundreds of thousands of homes. You might have 100. Thinking about what's going to be really important for you there. Anyone who's come to any of our other sessions, we've covered things around kind of strategy essentials. So that senior management buy-in, really key here. So again, thinking about that, how will you get there? Being really clear in how we're going to define that, and thinking about how you're going to identify success. Are you going to utilize internal resources, or is this more going to be something that's going to be external? And where do you want to be? This is really, really key. You might have an internal kind of facing kind of plan of what you want to do. You might be around really addressing issues around damp and mold. It might be around health and well-being. So there might be a significant issue around mental health in terms of some of the residents. It might be around how people can afford to pay for living in their home. It might be around skills. So thinking around possibilities for apprenticeships, for working with local contractors. There's lots of things, and there might just be a mix of those. There might be a variety in there that you really want to work towards. Your training department absolutely will want to kind of see opportunities for apprenticeships. It might be in terms of your community hub. You want to address the number of calls that are coming in about heating, for example. Whatever it might be, really make it unique to you. Progress that and form it into this target of how you want to do things and how you're going to get there. In terms of that kind of data, the variables that you can kind of think about, the left-hand side of this slide really shows some of those variables that you might want to consider for your baseline around the characteristics of those properties, particularly around those socio-economic factors. The right-hand side is then more about the target. So you've got the issues and the variables on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, we've got these targets that you're aiming for. So some of those outcomes that you want to kind of think about. You might really have noticed that there's a massive opportunity for local jobs. It might be around discussions around carbon literacy, around the discussions around climate change, linking back to net zero. It might be around issues around cost of living. So think about what it is in terms of what you want to be targeting, and think about how that might be really important to you with your retrofit project. So again, always welcomed. If you have any kind of targets or factors that you think for your organization is important, please do pop those in the chat. Again, some of these will be really bespoke and unique to your organization. So there might be particular housing characteristics, for example, that might be particularly unique to you. In the Social Housing Retrofit Accelerator and Decarbonisation Fund, we've had examples where they are very small numbers of properties within a organisation that are listed within conservation areas, again, which, you know, it creates a kind of really interesting project, but sometimes a challenge when you're trying to scale that up, just because of the size and scope of the project. So have a think about any of those other kind of baseline issues, the target factors you might want to have a think about. You might have a particular carbon neutral target. You might have it because you are in a kind of combined authority area, and therefore there are commitments made by that combined authority. But generally, it might just be actually you're wanting to get to a kind of an EPCC and as much of a kind of progression as you want. So we can always pick this up later in the slides. This is just a little example taken from an RP based in the Cotswolds. Just a little bit of kind of a look at what some of that baseline data might look like in terms of understanding the figures, the data. So here we've got the energy performance breakdown. So we've got D and below. So if we're trying to reach C, we want to understand all of those who are underneath that. So you can hopefully see that the 5475 number is a EPCE. So proportionally, that's a large amount of the portfolio for that organisation. And thinking, okay, well, actually, let's have a look at those. We can also see they've got some F and G in there as well. It might be that those G ratings are a particular archetype. It might be a particular state. It might be a particular kind of area that has maybe been challenging in the past. So having a think about, you know, what does the baseline information tell us, and how can we use that to really work forward with our retrofit at scale. The middle pie chart and picture image there is showing us what those property types are. So again, we've moved on for the energy performance. This is what type of home is kind of seen here. So again, all of you on this call will have different portfolios and different proportions of that. Some of you might have tower blocks, you might have historical estates. Here we can see that the proportion lies mostly with homes and houses rather. There is also some park homes. So again, as a particular archetype, that is an area sometimes of challenge and difficulty. And so understanding what that kind of looks like. And then the last one we have is really thinking about what this actually looks like. So we're thinking about kind of detached, terrace, mid-terrace, semi-detached. Again, understanding how, particularly if we've got semi-detached properties or terraces, we have neighbours and we have that kind of connected building, that when we come to do that, we will want to have buy-in from those residents and those tenants. There might be issues around scaffold going up. Again, understanding that scalability, particularly around scaffold, but we could talk about kind of certain energy supplies, you know, gas, electricity, if we're having to do lots of works there, can be a challenge. So again, thinking about what our portfolio looks like, and really thinking about wanting to actually break down the whole of your portfolio into your kind of archetypes here. So really understanding what your portfolio looks like. When we're talking about retrofit, we already know we have to kind of do significant more kind of at scale movement, improving many more homes, And we know from previous examples, particularly in the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund, but across the board in terms of retrofit projects, that there are challenges, and it is a journey. And every iteration of doing something, we see something slightly different. There's a different challenge that comes to work with us. There are lots of opportunities, but also lots of kind of big targets to go for. So we've got 9 kind of shown here on that kind of upscaling journey. We're just going to focus on the ones in grey, which is the top line. So the installer capacity, massively important at the moment if we're all wanting to do external wall insulation or PV on roofs. There's only so many installers that we have available to us. It can be a challenge. The retrofit roles capacity, that can be internal and external. The customer service capacity as well, so queries, concerns, engagement, and then the project team capacity. So the others are absolutely important. So the kind of budget, senior buy-in, customer retrofit appetite, the particular measures, and then the kind of the idea of area approaches. But for the purposes of the masterclass, we're just going to focus on those top 4 today. What I find really useful is kind of understanding, potentially in the supply chain, who can help with what. So you'll have some ideas in terms of what retrofit projects you want to be doing. You might have identified with surveys from your retrofit kind of designer, this is what this property would really benefit from. You might have previous experience, so you know that you can replicate that in other estates where it's a similar archetype, age, construction. You might be exploring new options for maybe some smaller areas, and really thinking about, okay, well, we've got this engaged supply chain, we've used them before, and in any procurement assessment you want to use them again, so you found that it's been a beneficial relationship. What you want to be doing is really thinking about that coverage. So in the procurement process, we'll want to be checking the coverage of those measures, and particularly how many installs that contractor has the capacity to do. It might be subcontractors as well. So here we've just kind of shown them as installers rather than kind of contractors and subcontractors. Again, think about the terminology that you use in your organization and how you might kind of lay this out. But thinking about in terms of the different installers that you're aware of, that you've used, thinking about the projects going forward, what you need to be doing. So you might be having some fabric first approach. So that might be different types of insulation. It might be top ups, but you also might be doing a decarbonising of heat project as well. So this might be around changing from maybe a gas boiler system to more of a heat pump. This might be at the kind of estate level, so maybe a ground source heat pump, or at the individual property level with something like an air source heat pump. So again, just setting it out, thinking, okay, well, these are some of the measures we want to be, we've identified that are appropriate for some of our properties. Here are all of our installers. Yes, we don't have any particular holes as well. The eagle eyes amongst you will have seen that the loft insulation, we've deliberately not ticked that, so none of the installers in this example are able to do that. So again, if that is part of it, it's identified that you have an area to kind of procure to. You might be on a framework, you might have kind of neighbouring RPs or social landlords that you can ask about who maybe could be doing loft insulation. So again, really thinking about those contractors that you can engage with, particularly if you've engaged in those before. There are also other things to think about in terms of other targets, other specifications that you want to be reaching for in terms of your project. So the last slide was about the actual measures. This slide is much more about capturing those other things that might be really important to you. So certainly things like local apprentices, apprenticeship, excuse me. You know, you might have social value targets around this. I went to a social landlord recently who were doing a whole house refurbishment and had employed 2 tenants on an apprenticeship track to work on those projects. So one of them was a multi-skilled apprentice, and one was a joiner. And so it kind of connected up all of the dots in terms of wanting to address the issues on this estate in terms of whole house getting to net zero, but also thinking about people and putting people at the front of it. So those 2 tenants of the landlord were then seeing firsthand actually what it meant to physically take that house down to the kind of the bricks and mortar really for this project, and then build it back up to make this you know, this net zero home. So again, it's sometimes about pulling out some of those details, thinking about how that's really positive in terms of people seeing it, talking about it. So you might have those particular targets. Different installers will have different numbers of apprenticeships, again, size and scale. There might also be challenges or opportunities around the distance of people traveling, particularly if you're more rural, that can be a real challenge depending on what meter diameter, so not diameter, radius, sorry, that you specify. But again, it can be something really useful in terms of supporting your small to medium enterprises within your estate, or within your if you're a local authority, within your local authority area as well. We're also thinking in terms of those installers, if we've worked with them before, what is that service rating like? So your procurement teams, or you as the procurement person, will have made some sort of assessment about how previous work might have gone. So thinking about those kind of customer service ratings as well. There might be real positives, but again, thinking about who it is you're going to be working for. And then interestingly, understanding capacity going forward. So here we've just put on some random figures. You might specifically have knowledge around that. So understanding for the installers that can do certain measures, understanding their capacity for the number of homes for your project going forward can be really really powerful. Understanding in terms of where that sits as well. Again, we'll talk through later, but also understanding not just from the installers, but those wider kind of project teams as well. So thinking about it, your project planning stage should cover how you will really spread the installs out. It might be that in terms of capacity, you can kind of do them concurrently, but really think about it, how it's going to work for you. Especially if you're bidding for funding, you'll need to consider this as part of the application, excuse me, particularly when we're thinking about seasonal variations. Thinking about you know, heating needs, you know, timescales of kind of doing that. You know, we're coming out of the heating season now. It's been a bit longer this year in terms of people needing to have the heating on. So understanding how those seasonal variations, weather, so external works, thinking about how that can play a part. So the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero also want to see that confidence in the delivery. So you might have already procured someone, or you might have done some soft market testing for the measures, but understanding that and having that as part of future funding bids can be really powerful. So again, thinking about how this might look. So we've got some examples of kind of batching. You might have it in a different way because of the numbers. You might have it in terms of the different measures you're doing. But the idea here is to show that actually we've got different batches of the homes that we want to be addressing. We're going to phase it over a number of months, cumulatively, to kind of increase as we go along. So at the end of this project, it'll be 170 properties that will have been completed, just as an example on this slide. When we're thinking about retrofit roles as well, so again, past 2035, thinking about all of the roles and responsibilities that we have in there, thinking about as well how much this is going to be really important in this. There has been noted that there is a massive challenge in terms of getting those surveys undertaken. Hopefully we will see more people coming onto the kind of role to be able to do that. And so understanding that the timescales in that retrofit journey are going to be really important. So getting those surveys done, understanding what measures we can install, and then reflecting that in our install date. So here we've got just an example. So we're doing the surveys last month, and then in June and July we will hopefully be able to start doing our installs, because we will have the time frame, the procurement to kind of pull all of that through. Absolutely, customers are going to be at the heart of this. You know, our residents, our tenants, anyone who's involved in kind of the estates is really going to be important in this. So again, what we're trying to really pull through here is the understanding about how they fit into it. So really kind of thinking, okay, we want to do this project. This is the reason why I want to do it. Getting that sign up, that agreement, those surveys, then getting the install bit, which I'm sure lots of you on the call will know, very disruptive in some cases, particularly if there's scaffolds, there's skips, there's site cabins. It's then saying, okay, well, this has been done, it's successful, all of that goes. The post-install checks as well. And then particularly in line with past 2035, that monitoring and evaluation and understanding about how well, hopefully, the project has been kind of gone through. So really think about the timescales here, because if we're trying to retrofit more at scale, we're trying to add capacity, we're trying to do as many as we can successfully, robustly, with good quality management. Thinking about, you know, how long is this going to take? This might be your first retrofit project, it might be your 75th, and everything in between. But really thinking about, okay, well, actually, how long is this going to kind of help me? You know, what time allowance do I need to be putting in? So again, this can be a really useful activity to undertake, to think about where it all fits in. Different sizes, different measures, different estates, different geographical settings will have different hours apply to it. But it's just about getting those kind of those ideas about what we can can do there. Thinking about the person doing those particular roles, really thinking about, do they have the capacity to do that? You might be in a really large organization that has multiple projects going on, and therefore have multiple resourcing, let's call them challenges, around having the ability to do that. You might be in a team of 10, excuse me, and actually it might be more, it might be all 10 of you doing it. You might be, you know, in a kind of interdisciplinary team where there are multiple people who are able to do different things. So think about how it applies to your organization and how this might look. Think about the key people who are going to be involved at each stage, and think about how that might play forward. When we look deeper at that and we kind of think about skills, do we have all the skills that we need for this project? If we don't, can we internally source someone else, you know, second someone in perhaps? Or does it need to actually be procured from an external resource? It might be that some of the installers have that capability, that it can be an added element to their contract. It might be that you already work with a support organisation. Whatever it might be, really think about those skills and how that is going to play in. So again, this is might be some of the kind of indicative elements that we might see. So there might be significant kind of hours at that beginning in terms of the pre-install. That will then kind of tailor off later into the summer as we kind of get into the install elements. So thinking about how we're going to get people signed up, taking into consideration things like in May, we have bank holidays. We also have half term. So that can, again, cause some interesting challenges around kind of getting to people, getting to tenants, internal colleagues, external colleagues. Again, so thinking about how this might look for your organization, making sure that actually that sign up process is something that is maintained, that builds momentum. I've seen it before where organizations have used kind of pilot projects to really then inspire other residents to see how that kind of whole install process played out and then understand what that might mean for them. So again, you might have some really nice examples on how you've done that before. Still thinking about customers, we're thinking about that install process, we're thinking about those the time spent that you're going to have to be really thinking about those post-install kind of compliance checks as well, and things like monitoring and evaluation. Really think about how that is something that is much more long term. So you might have set it up that it's going to be in excess of 12 months after, because you really want to understand the implication for your residents and tenants. When we're thinking about our project team, again, depending on the size and scale, your ambition, your portfolio, your team might be significantly kind of large. It might be 1 or 2 people. So again, have a think about, you know, who is going to fit in there, the key project roles or items that are needed to be covered, what it is they're going to cover, and then recognizing that you might not have that internally, you might not have it available in terms of capacity. So someone might already be on a project and they can't be taken off that project. You might have someone with the skills, but unfortunately they are on long-term sick. Whatever it might be, understanding how this is going to look for you, thinking about those costs as well, and especially if you need to outsource that, how much is that going to look like? So thinking about if you're going to have to go to an installer for resident liaison officer, for example, or any other role that might fit into that. So understanding how people fit into this to get the project moving, get that momentum going, and really have the ability to scale up. When we have those clearly defined retrofit or kind of roles, things like the survey, things like the design, really understanding each of those. You might have multiple installers. They might be doing different measures at the same property, understanding that scalability, the capacity, the ability to do that. Thinking about, you might have a customer hub, for example, that has a kind of telephone number that is utilized. How are we going to support those people in that role who might have a particular query about your project? And then your internal teams or an external agency around that marketing and communication. So we've got a couple more slides and then we can open it up to questions or kind of sharing. So have a think about if you've got any examples you can share. So some of the things we've certainly seen in terms of working on this this project is really around understanding what you can do and make it so that you can really start to scale up that. So you might have started with 50 properties, you can then scale it up to 200, you might even be able to scale it up to 1,000 and beyond, which is absolutely fantastic. So really think about understanding the different approaches that you can do. We've seen organizations that have significantly built internal skills, significantly built on the resource that is internal, absolutely sees benefits around that control of the delivery. If you are potentially employing someone, there are potentially financial benefits there. Building that capacity, building that resilience in terms of being able to keep going with the momentum of retrofit projects. Availability, if they're an internal person, much more flexibility there. But of course, there are some elements of kind of challenge here as well. So thinking about time to build those skills, they might be new to role rather, and need that much more of that development. But there might also be that capacity to kind of support them with mentoring. And again, that external resource might be much more experienced in that. Conversely, it could be the other way around as well. So really have a think about how that's going to be important for you. Again, for your organization and how you financially operate, it might be that building some skills and resource outsourcing delivery is going to be really important here. So it might be around time and capacity. So that's a positive in terms of freeing up time for other work. You might have, say, a lot of new build properties that you need to focus on rather than the retrofit. You might have specific standards that need to be adhered to. We know in the social housing environment that there are a lot of kind of consumer challenges that are coming through. So we see that with information coming from the Housing Ombudsman, social housing regulator. So again, there might be that challenge there in terms of really focusing on that and pushing that forward. If you are using external, potentially we have issues around kind of oversight, control, finance, but again, understanding your local circumstance and how that specifically applies to you and how you can kind of really reach that at scale retrofit to your benefit and for the benefit of your tenants, the benefit of the residents, and to the performance of the buildings that you look at. Always good to have a look at some of the pros and cons of cost benefits for any project. The project plan, looking at the timescales, the resourcing, risk management. You might have particular KPIs that you are looking at. Particularly in retrofit, there will be key qualifications. You might add in also experience there because you might have already done lots of projects and therefore you know what you need to look out for. So you will need organizations that have those really great examples that have shown that they can deliver these projects at scale. And so really thinking about internal, external costs, but also thinking about timescales. When we're doing a retrofit project, we might have it all kind of set out. We know that when we've been doing projects, sometimes those timescales can be challenged. You might have internal sign-off deadlines, particularly in local authorities. If things have to go to a particular meeting to be signed off, we know that that's a key point to get to. Internally in your organization, you might have trustees, you might have a particular board approach. Where does the short term, medium term, and long term come into that and have an influence of what you can do? So really think about how this kind of time can be spent to really analyze those positives and negatives of the different types of approaches that you might want to have a look at. We pulled together this kind of example. It is just completely made up. Some of you might be looking at it thinking, oh, that looks quite familiar. It's taken from across the team, and Louise, who introduced us today, kind of pulled this together. So credit to Louise here. Really thinking about some of those different elements that come into play. So for those of you who are thinking about, have a think about what some of the factors here from your experience are going to be really important. So we know that this kind of energy retrofit team has 5 full-time equivalents members of staff. So we've got 2 housing project officers and 3 capital. We also have the building maintenance team, so kind of scalability there. We've got 5 surveyors, some senior ones, some compliance specialists, some technicians, some housing officer members as well. In terms of the homes, we're looking at 1,500, EcoFlex, Wave 2.1, but also in terms of your kind of what you want to aim for, actually some more private sector retrofit as well. In terms of some of the details here, we've got the project officers looking for making those referrals, the bids, training, customer calls. You've got some experience in terms of NEA, which is National Energy Action, and Cities and Guilds. Excuse me, I always say Cities and Gold, and yeah, Cities and Guild. So thinking about other qualifications, so here we've kind of identified that they've got no project management specific qualifications and no official retrofit qualifications. Now, that might be that they don't have a qualification, but they might have some elements of experience of previous work. In terms of the private sector housing team, HHSRS, so that's kind of the risk assessment, particularly in terms of different criterias there. Minimum energy standards. You've also got some landlord compliance and licensing. So really looking at this in terms of the challenge, obviously we've left out some details. Are there any recommended kind of actions for this team to kind of upscale its private sector retrofit accelerate its delivery? So here, we might be thinking about, okay, well, they've got some potential skills gaps. It might be we need to kind of focus on how we can do that, linking in with other teams. So if you've got any ideas, do put them in the chat. You might have some other examples in terms of experience you've had with private sector retrofit delivery. Looking at this kind of straight away, I would definitely say more of the kind of resident engagement side, particularly with private sector retrofit. It's about getting that buy-in, and it's about thinking, how is this going to benefit that person. So there'll be lots of other things that you're probably thinking of here. Finance, absolutely. Capacity, that comes into play as well. So have a think about that. We can also have a discussion in a little bit. As always with these masterclasses, we kind of bring it together and then share some further resources with you. So absolutely, for kind of that scalability, you are trying to weigh up those pros and cons of building that team, getting that team to really focus on moving things forward, aligning people internally and potentially externally, really mapping those skills to really understand how you can deliver it, making any adjustments that need to take place, thinking about resourcing, timescales, getting everything to be kind of lined up, and making sure that we've got that progression forwards to kind of move things on, learning from experience as well. In terms of some of the further resources, again, please do share with colleagues that you might have. So there are some SHRA masterclasses on retrofitting blocks of flats, developing capacity, assembling and managing your team, and then procuring. These are all free of charge. Like Louise said at the beginning, these slides will get sent round to you, so any of the links, kind of the images, you'll be able to have a look at and click on those. But all of the masterclasses are available for you free of charge to have a look at. And then last slide is really, if you do have any particular queries or questions, or want to reach out because there's a particular challenge that you're facing or not, we have a whole range of specialists and within our team who'll be able to support with this. So please do email info@socialhousingretrofit.org. The website is there as well to go and have a look at. There's lots of podcasts and recorded masterclasses as well. So I will stop sharing my slide there and say thank you ever so much for listening.